Would you be comfortable explaining to the user, telling them what you had designed? The answer is no. Your test is probably not ethical.
What is going on, certified homies? Welcome to another episode of From A to B. Yes, Shiva, and I'm joined by John Metal as Fuck Crowder. How do you like that for a nickname?
Yeah, I'll take it.
You're in an original metal band, right?
Yes, I'm in, and a non-original metal band as well. I'm in a couple.
Okay, and you're the lead singer, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Do you play guitar or anything as well, or you just sing?
I do. Yeah. I play a few instruments, guitar, keyboard.
I saw the videos on LinkedIn. Very talented, very cool. So anyone in the UK, go check him out if you're into the metal stuff. Just for podcast listeners, they won't be able to see stuff, but if you just look at his LinkedIn presence, John's LinkedIn presence, it is metal as fuck. I love it. Like, it is slightly unhinged energy, but in the best way possible. So John, Metal as Fuck Crowder, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah, I've got a theory about that, because I did, when I started Another Web is Possible, which was it's not that old, right? It's a couple of months old. I was kind of thinking, like, how authentic should I be? How much of who I am outside of past 5 p.m. How much of that should bleed over into it? And I kind of just aligned with, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it all. Let's go as authentic as we possibly can. I kind of think that hits even harder now than it kind of ever has, right? I think, like, a lot of people are looking for something real, and the more real you can appear, the better.
Even if you are not as good at specific things that people want you to be better at, it's rather to be open and honest and know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and say, this is where I fit, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm bad at, rather than you read these, like, generic agencies that, like, yeah, we do everything digital. And it's like, but you don't. You really suck at specific things, but you say you do it because you feel like that will give you a better position for people to pay you more money. And oftentimes it does. But yeah, I respect it. I respect people who are honest about their LinkedIn presence and their personal presence and everything. And that's a really good segue into this topic. You had a post recently, and I'm going to try and briefly summarize it because I might have commented like a actually kind of reply, but there was a lot of thought that went into it that I wanted to get you on to actually explore. So let's just, without dancing around it, let's talk about the post. The post is basically a story of a test that you ran recently, and it was not a fake door test, but the client was pushing you towards a fake door test. The fake door test means it looks like there's some real functionality, but the reality is it's not real. It's a fake door. It looks like a door, but when you open it, there's nothing behind it. That's the origin of that term or whatever. The test that your client wanted to run was like a fake, only 2 items left in stock for an e-com client. And what you said was you pushed back and you said, no, let's have genuine stock information. Let's run an A/B test when we actually have the information, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to get everything set up, but let's do it properly. Let's not lie and just say there's 2 in stock when there's actually more than 2 in stock. Let's say there's 50 in stock. I kind of summarized that sentiment and story, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the only thing I would correct is it's not that recent. It's like more than a year ago that I did this. But yeah. Other than that, pretty much spot on.
Okay, so you posted about it recently, but it was a story from a little bit ago. Got it.
Yeah. Part of the foundational myth, if you like, of Another Web is Possible. But yeah.
Cool.
But yes. Yeah.
So in this story, you did build the actual functionality, and it was a pain in the ass, and then you actually did run the test for the actual accurate in-stock indicator, and it did lift conversion rate.
That's
so the
right.
point of the story is not, hey, everyone add an in-stock indicator. But what I really wanted to double click into it was like, I guess there's things to think about. On one side, is it okay to lie to people in this fake door type of test? Like, would it have been unethical to do this, like, okay, only 2 in stock as a test to say, okay, if it does well, let's build the whole thing? Is that unethical? let's start there first. Do you think that's unethical?
Not just unethical, in quite a lot of marketplaces, illegal as well. Let's nail that one to the mast, because that is misleading about availability and urgency. So it does differ by marketplace because the regulatory body differs, but in most of the EU, that's illegal.
Cool. Well, that was an easier question to answer than I thought it would be. The legality of things. Although, to be fair, a lot of accessibility stuff is technically illegal, but you can skirt, or I'm not advocating for it, but a lot of people skirt around it. So
For sure. And also, like, the way that a lot of regulatory compliance is maintained is it kind of gets investigated on complaint and never any other way, right? So, like, a great example of this is opting people into marketing permissions by default, or making it really hard and confusing for them to know what they're opting into. All of that's illegal, right? But I bet you can go and find it on a website today, right? Very, very easy to find. It will happen, I would say, to most people most days if they're using the internet. A lot of regulatory bodies are not going out looking for that, but they will investigate a complaint and uphold a complaint if one is made. And so that tends to be how that environment works.
let's take out the legality of it, because I want to figure out more on the ethics side of this. If it wasn't illegal, you're still pretty heavy and yeah, no, this is unethical.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of reasons behind this. One is that you're manufacturing a kind of demand that isn't really there, right? And that is what moves people's behavior. And two, it's a bad test in the purest, like, trying to figure out if the hypothesis is true or not, right? Because what we're saying is different to what we're doing, right? Because what we're saying is, oh, if we just show people stock availability, then they would be more likely to purchase because they think that there's a chance that it might be out of stock. Right. But the actual implementation of that would have been an artificial stock number, which was artificially low. And actually, if you're in, and for the particular item, it was a fashion item, for them to have two in stock should have triggered a reordering or some sort of different outcome anyway, right? So there's very rarely going to be a situation where in the real world that would have actually been seen or experienced. So it would have overinflated how often that happens. Therefore, if it won, and I think it probably would have done, right? I'm going to be really clear on that. It's a bad pattern and it's dishonest, but it probably would have driven behavior. If it had won, it would have misattributed the actual impact of doing it properly anyway, right? And so you would have either created an environment where you have to break the law with all of your products, terrible thing to do, in order to match the design of the test that you actually had originally done, or implement it and get a completely different result from the one that you actually got when you tested it, right? And so, like, this is just not a great A/B test in any sort of shape or form. It does sort of get at if your immediate and only overriding desire is to get more people to buy something and nothing else, and you don't really care about what happens to those people downstream, then yeah, you probably would have moved the needle there. But I think that you actually get more value from doing it properly, because when you do it properly, when we did it properly, and to be clear, when I say it was a pain in the ass, it was a real pain in the ass, right? Because I'm a big fan of A/B tests. Do not have to live forever on a website. They shouldn't really be designed that way unless it's easy to do so. You just have to live long enough to prove or disprove the hypothesis well, right? And so in this example, we ended up like producing daily updates to a CSV file that was referenced in order to check against stock availability. And then it would increment against that, right? And that is annoying, because the reason we have to do that is because they get stock in all the time. So it would go down and it would also go back up. So we can't just take away from a single number. That is an impossible way to run a business because of the overhead that produces. So if you ever put that into production, you would never do that. But it's perfectly fine for a sort of 3-week A/B test. Perfectly fine. We can do that, and it's worth it to do that. But that was an honest test because it was an accurate reflection of the actual stock levels.
I'll keep on pushing you on this because I think the thing you're most fixated on is in stock. For example, the in-stock indicator, if it just said low stock and that was technically accurate, you probably wouldn't have had an issue with this, right? It's the fact that they explicitly said 2. They had an actual number that was not correct to the best of the ability to the business.
Yeah, and if I were working with a client who wanted to show low stock notifications, one thing that I would be pushing him to do would be to define that as well. I actually think you get better outcomes when you define that for the user.
Sure. So then that leads me to another question. Is it ever ethical to lie? And I say that, like, here's an example. This is a very blurred lines thing. And I think it depends on the business and the company and the audience and how you position it. There's a lot of dependencies. But for example, let's say I was selling from A to B merch, which I totally am. Let's say I said things were flying off the shelves, literally, which in my case, they were. I was not lying about that. But what if that wasn't actually true? What if I said, man, I have low stock, or things are flying off the shelves, there's so much interest, and I got one purchase in like 4 months. Is that unethical? Did y'all know that you're listening to the podcast of an experimentation thought leader? Like an award-winning one? Well, thanks to you guys, yeah, I did win, and I appreciate you. If you could do me a huge favor and throw a like, subscribe to our newsletter, and subscribe to this podcast. The newsletter is from A to B.beehive, beehiiv.com. I'd really appreciate it, but you guys already did the work. You can save that for next episode. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
I would argue yes, but the impact is lower, right?
So what's, I guess, what goes into your evaluation of like good marketing, which maybe blurs the lines, versus ethical, right? There's a balance between both of those. So how do you determine what goes into your thought process of like leaning more towards ethics rather than, this is just good marketing, dog?
I don't want to sort of obfuscate good marketing as sort of being, you kind of have to be really liberal with the truth, right? Like I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, right? I don't think that's true. I think the best marketing comes from really knowing what is valuable about your product and then really leaning on it, like really doubling down on it. I don't think you have to bend the truth to do that, right? You can be completely honest about who buys your product, what they use it for, why it's good, what value it has. And that would be good marketing in and of itself. It's just understanding people's like needs and drivers and things like that. Quite often people try to use marketing to cover for a product that is a bit weak, that I see sometimes. For example, I see this in supplement marketing a lot, where like they know they kind of can't say what the health benefits are because they're legally not allowed to do that, but they kind of try to nudge and wink their way towards it. A lot of the reason that they can't legally say it is because it's not been proven to be true, right? And so that's a weakness of the product in my mind. That's not a weakness of the marketing. The marketing is having to market a weaker product.
So going back to basically fake door testing, something I want to bring to the table, and this is where I had some challenges with this thinking about it, is like there's a balance of impact to the business, meaning how much time it took you and the business to manually build out this test, versus the impact to the end user, where in this example, if you did have a low stock indicator, I'd say I get your point about if it was literally 2 versus low stock, that's a heightened version of the variable that's different. That's not sustainable because the number will change. So I get your point about that maybe not being the best test, but let's say low stock. Let's say low stock was accurate, that anything less than 10 is low stock. That would be accurate. It's a principle of scarcity that still works. So let's just say that was the test that you wanted to run. I guess that's less of an impact on the ethics side of things, because technically you're right. I mean, maybe this test isn't like the best case example, but where is the line, or what are the considerations for value to business? Because it would take you, John, a long time. And it did take you a long time of manual work to build this out, versus had we not done all this work and we just use a fake number and we prove out the principle, then we'll do it right in the long term. And this is where I was struggling. And I was like, if it's a short-term impact to UX, but you learn something and you'll do it properly once it wins, I don't think that's as unethical. But I'm curious if you still think that's like still pretty unethical.
Yeah, I got a question what the value of the learning is in particular, right? Like, so a good example, right, is if it does accurately reflect your stock levels, and it's easy to do that. Let's say that's an easy way to get there more than the manual one that we did. Fine, right? Like it's going to tell you that, and then you can go do it properly. Fine, really, really fine. But actually, if the thing that you learn is if your stock levels were lower and that's not how your business looks today, how implementable is that learning? Because you would have to either, what you would have to do is model out what you're going to change afterwards, right? So are you going to order less stock so you artificially keep it lower because you know that? And that's a crazy way to run a business, right? Particularly if you've got the merchandising space to hold it. That, to me, feels like almost trying to hack your way around. How do we have more scarcity in an area where scarcity is harder?
That's you being very strategic in the way you're thinking about the test, which of course we should all do. I think a lot of people testing these like low stock indicator things, I'd like to give them the best of intention, but I think the reality is they are beyond happy in many cases, not all, in many cases, they're beyond happy to have plenty of stock, but just use this as a hack. You've seen the as seen on TV commercials, right? This is an extension of a lot of those as seen on TV commercials where it's like a countdown timer of like, quickly order this thing in 10 minutes and we'll send you a free gift. It's like, they're going to send you the free gift anyway. So like this thing is just tapping into your brain to try and capitalize on this scarcity thing.
And I also think that gets less powerful over time. The more that people do that to you, everywhere you go, the less powerful it becomes, right? So like a really good example, in the 80s, right? If a vacuum salesman came to your door to sell you a vacuum cleaner door to door, one thing that those sort of in-person high-pressure sales would do is if it didn't seem like you were going to buy it, they would pretend to get in touch with their manager or say they've got a limited time offer or something they can give you in order to try and get you to convert today and buy the vacuum cleaner, right? That is such a trope now that if that happens in-person high-pressure sales, it doesn't work anymore for the most part.
It still does with some people, but I get your point. The value or the impact of this thing is like less and less and less.
Yeah, and if you did it to me, one, I would know exactly what you were doing and the trust would go like that. I would no longer trust you because I've seen you use a technique on me, right? I've just seen I've seen the Jedi mind trick as you're trying to do it, right? And I would literally be like, are you kidding? Are you kidding me now? But is this where we're at, right? And it suddenly wouldn't, and that vanishing trust, that happens online as well. And like the moment, for example, like you go to a D2C brand, right? They sell a couple of products, maybe drop shipped stuff, right? They're one of a site you're probably only ever going to see once, right? If you buy the product. You land on that site, it's got Mary from Arizona just bought this, 2 left, going fast. Very quickly you see that and you're like, I don't believe any of these messages. I don't believe any of this. And it's very easy to close that down. It's such a tired and old tactic that you've got to build trust, and trust takes time, and it's very easy to lose it. And that's one of the ways you can lose it very quickly, by just becoming a pressure sales model, right?
So you mentioned a little while back, when we're thinking about fake door testing, the value of learning. With fake door testing, if you're going to go down this route, make it so fucking clear. What are you planning on learning about this? And think about the user experience, because you don't want to create if you're going to go this fake door route and you're going to create, let's say, a temporarily bad user experience because they expect a door and it's fake, the best thing you have to do, or the most important thing you have to do, is make sure you are learning something valuable while you're screwing over your customers, and that it's temporary and it's time gapped. I think you would agree with that like it's not a good thing to screw over customers, but like if you're going to go down this route with a fake door, maybe you give them a coupon. It's like, hey, sorry, we don't have this thing built yet, but here's a coupon for like B2C customers.
If you want to learn something in medicine, where the stakes are so much higher than anything we do on a website, you have to put your test before a board of ethics, right? And what that board of ethics is designed to do is to help you try and prove your hypothesis or disprove your hypothesis in the most accurate way possible without disadvantaging the end user. And what that means is, if you're testing drugs, for example, life-saving drugs, life-saving medicine, you test against the next best available medicine. Because in a lot of drugs trials, you want to test against placebo, right? Because you can then isolate every single effect. Can't do that with life-saving medicine because you will kill people. So you don't do it, right? You take a medicine that you know already works and you compare against that. And that trade-off makes the evidence weaker, but it is also clearly the right thing to do. And I think you can apply that axiom with your experiments online, right? I think the stakes are lower, right? No one's dying here, but you can apply that axiom with your experiments online. A really good example of a painted door test or a fake door test, right? Let's say you are redesigning your login flow. You want to figure out if it's worth plugging in OAuth for Google and Apple. You want to see how many people would use this if we put it in. Is it even something that people give a damn about? You can put the buttons there and you can have people click them. And then when they click them, you can say, we're really sorry, this doesn't work right now, but we did want to see if people are interested. But here's how you can go and create an account. It is annoying. You have annoyed someone there, but the stakes are low and the disadvantage is low. And you can then use the evidence gathered on clicks on that page to be your case to whether you go and do the work to plug in OAuth, right? I wouldn't say that's necessarily unethical. It's there's a little bit of deception going on there. But one, you immediately owned up to it. It's very, very clear why you did it. And two, the actual impact to the user is really, really low. They clicked something and it didn't work. Everyone had that experience online. Who cares, right? It's fine. You'll carry on as normal. I think you can plan around your hypotheses. There are some cases where a painted door test would be fine and would be perfectly adequate, right? I actually think that owning up to it is great because you have a real opportunity to do like even more data gathering to support your hypothesis if you do that. Right? A good example of that would be the page you take a user to when they click a button that says log in or don't log in. Log in via Google, sorry. Could say, do you use this service anywhere else, right? Would you use this service if it exists? Can you give us feedback on this, right? You can put that in. You've owned up to the test now. The data that you needed was the click. It's already there.
So as you were talking, John, something that I found through the Google interwebs was basically how boards evaluate ethics and things. And what I came across was the principles of Nuremberg codes, which as I go through these, it's so interesting how many parallels I think things apply to what you're talking about. So there's 10 stages. I want to go through these kind of quickly, but I'd love for your thoughts on how these become CRO things. So first one, the voluntary consent of the study participant is essential, which kind of fucks up the A/B test in some ways, doesn't it?
Everyone has consented if they're if you're doing it right, everyone has already consented. Whether they know they've consented or not is a completely different question.
Legally they're consented, but in the state of medical stuff where they're consented to the risks and stuff, I guess at that point the risks are minimal to the web user versus the risks in a medical setting are much higher. So
yeah.
Check. One check, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. In medical, because the other risks are a lot higher, right? So the risk online is, for the most part, you get a different experience. Maybe it changes your behavior. That could be bad. But yes, I'd say check.
Number 2, the experiment should aim to yield results that benefit society and cannot be obtained another way. Glowing check, right?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, yeah, this is interesting, this one, actually, because I think you could debate quite heavily whether it benefits society individually or not. But
what if you're a company that's burning through a bunch of AI tokens to contribute to climate change?
For sure, right? Right, yeah, exactly, right? if you're the company that's building wind farms, cool, fine. Selling more wind farms, great, right?
True. So point heard, but I think I guess when we say, let's reframe that to say the experiment should aim to yield results that benefit users and companies in the same way.
Yeah.
And cannot be obtained another way is another one that I think is a good check for fake door tests.
Yep. I would agree with that. I'd say that really interesting point there. I actually think it's probably unethical to do pricing tests in this way, right?
That's a whole other one. Let's go into that later.
Okay.
But I get what you mean. That's a really great one. Number 3, the research should be based on previous knowledge. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's a CRO principle 101. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Update your priors.
The risks involved in the investigation should be proportional to the anticipated benefits and conducted to avoid unwarranted physical and medical afflictions and injury. 4 for 4.
Yeah, for sure.
This is crazy how parallel this is to just evaluating ethics in fake door testing. The research should not be conducted if there's reason to believe that death or a disabling injury should occur. Yes, of course. We should not run an A/B test if we're going to hurt people.
If your website kills the user, it's gone really badly. It's really gone wrong.
I also really want to know if a website is capable. I guess ChatGPT kind of okay, whatever. That one's a kind of morbid one, but yes, most websites I wager 99.9% of websites will not have to even worry about this. So that's great. Glowing check, 5 out of 5. Number 6, the amount of risk should not surpass the significance of the problem solved by the study. I think this one is interesting, where if we reframe this, the amount of risk, meaning frustration that the user has to face, should not surpass the significance of the problem we're trying to solve by the study.
Yeah, I guess in fake door tests, I would say that's maybe reasonable. You'd have to really frustrate your user, I think. Right, in order
like you're basically like you're marketing the door metaphorically, and you're like, oh, look at this door, it's amazing, go check it out. And they're like, hell yeah, let's jump in. And they open it like Looney Tunes and just like fall, like run into a brick, right? So I think that's the idea, is like, if you opt people in where if they are massively disappointed by that thing not existing, then I'd say that probably checks it. But if they're like, oh, okay, well, that was cool,
thought of a good example of how you would actually, of where this would be wrong, right? For example, you have a SaaS product, you say it can do something it doesn't do, it's just something you're thinking about for the roadmap, you sell access to it based on that, you take someone's money, it doesn't have the feature after they go in, that's going to really annoy your user. Shouldn't do it.
I like that. That's a really good example. So number 7, the setting and environment must be adequate to protect the study participant from any possibility of harm, injury, or death. Well, kind of like a lot of these are like death related. As long as you check the box of not physically or emotionally or mentally harming your users, great. Don't do that. That's really bad. That's a Shiva best practice. Don't emotionally abuse your participants or A/B testing participants. Okay, how about this? Scientifically qualified individuals must conduct the study and research. Are we scientists?
I mean, we can certainly behave like scientists. Scientifically qualified is interesting as a term, because qualified would mean some kind of academic
PhD
achievement. There is really no academic route into CRO. I know, like you've got places that train people to do it, but that's not the same. So
what's the qualification for a person to run a fake door test? What do you need?
I think you need to understand the principles of
what
experiment
qualification
design.
do I need to buy to run it? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, okay. I'll sell you one. I'll send you my Venmo.
Anyone trying to run a fake door test, we're going to go to another web as possible, and you're going to be able to buy a certificate that will allow you to run fake door tests.
Yeah, I'll give you my Venmo. You can send me like $120 and I'll print something off for you.
Please, can we actually do this? I would love to do this. You will be certified in running fake door tests. All right, bullshit aside, like what is actually required from, let's say, CROs to run a fake door test? What should you need? Is it just the strategic thinking?
You need to understand, test design and what you're trying to achieve. You need to have a level of strategic thinking to understand what you'll do with the information once you've got it. You'll need to design the test in such a way that it does prove or disprove your hypothesis. Can't be overstated how often that doesn't happen, right? There's a principle which is at the core of scientific inquiry. It sits this kind of principle of used by the Royal Society. Do you know what the Royal Society is? Okay, Royal Society is like a body of academics and scientists in England. Was originally, so it's really, really old. We're talking like kings and queens era, right? Like it has a slogan in Latin that basically translates to take nobody's word for it, right? Prove it. That's what they're saying. Prove it. Prove it with evidence. Show off your evidence, right? Take nobody's word for it. That's the principle behind it. That principle is even older, which goes back to what I consider the first ever scientist to be, which is a guy called Ibn al-Hazm, who is the father of optics, right? He invented he discovered the principles of how we see, and then wrote loads of books on it. And I'm going to paraphrase him here, so you'll have to excuse me on this, but he basically said, accept none of the prevailing dogma that exists and make yourself an enemy of your own hypothesis and try and prove yourself wrong. Keep trying to prove yourself wrong. If you can't prove yourself wrong, you just might be right. Right?
I really love this. This is a really good CRO mentality. And I think it's a good data analyst mentality too. With A/B tests, when you're running a test, look for all the reasons why. If you have a big winner, let's say plus 17% to a key metric and everything else looks pretty good and everything's like static, like you're following all these principles properly. What are the reasons why these data might be broken, might be inaccurate, might actually be misleading, might be affecting user experience. Find every single possible reason why that data actually fucks over users in some way and investigate all of that. Because I think it's lazy CRO to just look at number go up and be like, we did the thing. To your point, you basically have been talking about this whole time, is like strategic CRO is thinking critically about the user. It's not like if we add an add to cart button on the category page, we'll see conversions go up by 50,000 billion%. And it's like, why? And why would it not work? Why would it work? Are we looking at clicks on the button? Are we doing? It's like you're gonna ask 50,000 questions about it. Maybe not 50,000, maybe a little bit less than that. But this is the core of CRO, and you should apply this to fake door testing in the same way. And in fact, you would probably argue more vigorously because there is a potentially even worse negative impact to users, right?
Yeah. The risks to users are a lot higher, right, than just sort of signaling, changing messaging around that, that sort of thing. The chances are you can indicate a feature that just doesn't exist, right, or will never exist. But yeah, you kind of have to understand it on its own merits, right? But like, you should never not be thinking about that user, because they're the people who ultimately have to experience whatever you're going to build, right? So if you can't figure out why a person would have a better experience, either in the complete end state or even during the actual experiment itself, you probably don't have a particularly good experiment.
That's like problem focused rather than solution focused, where if you're like commenting on a checklist or following best practices, you're starting at the end and probably not even going critically backwards towards a problem, versus that's why I always keep on leaning in on problem focus, because if you start with problems, the solutions tend to be pretty easy to figure out what to test. But if you're going the other way around, you're taking a bunch of darts, throwing it at the wall, and like that's spaghetti testing. You're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Here's a really good example actually right now. Like this isn't a painted door test, but this is an example of how doing the strategic thing gets you to, I think, a better place, right? Literally right now in that window, you can't see it, but in that window on my computer, I am working on a new experience for a client I'm working with right now. Their site at the moment sells you tickets. The ticket structure is kind of, at the moment, a little bit confusing to users, and they can't, like, the understanding value for what you pay is hard for that user as well. Also, understanding exactly what you get for your money is pretty hard. And we kind of started from that point to sort of build a better experience, and then we ended up layering up from there. And like the version I'm working on right now takes a whole bunch of that user's experience into account and then gives them extra stuff on top of it. So I think it's going to be a great experiment when we run it. But to give you an example, the location of where these tickets would be bought would be London, right? And there is a lot of things in the area that are like would have been bundled into what these tickets are and stuff like that, right? Whereas what we're going to be able to do with this experience is we looked at what people are actually motivated by when they're buying these tickets and what they're trying to do. Most people are tourists. Most people are trying to have a great time out, either with a partner or with a family. Because we know that, we've been able to do a level of personalization, which can basically say, on the day that you're looking to book, because you've got like two tickets in your cart, here's some experiences that we also sell that are great for couples, and the weather's going to be nice, and this experience is outside, right? None of this existed before. The user was kind of had on their own and kind of had to figure all of that out themselves. The experience that we are going to test should be better for that user overall, because it should help them basically plan their leisure activity more effectively and understand what the end experience is going to be like if that works out. We would never have got there at all without a deep understanding of that user and what they're trying to do. Because if we had gone at this from a best practice point of view, we might have just put like going fast and most popular flags on the tickets and not done anything else.
It's crazy how much thought you just put into that test. That is right-sized, right? That's a perfect amount of thought that you went through describing everything. This is gold star CRO. Love that. That's amazing. I know we kind of pinballed into like some of this other stuff. The last two, by the way, for the Nuremberg Code stuff, it was at any time the study participant can leave or drop out of the study. They could leave the website, check the box. That's easy. Like we're not forcing them to be on the website. And then the lead scientist of the study must be prepared to end the research at any stage if there's probable reason to believe that someone could die. Yes, of course. If we feel like we're significantly negatively impacting user experience, or literally harming their emotional or physical state, whatever, yes, end the test. So it was really interesting to see. This code was written in 1947. And it's interesting how sometimes still stuff just like still is resonant literally like 70 years later. That's crazy.
I'm a big fan of ethical panels at businesses for everything actually, but experimentation is my area, so I tend to talk about that a lot. But I think it is a very... within that ethical panel, you can even have people there to advocate only on behalf of the user, people there to advocate only on behalf of the business. This is the other thing that I think is really important as well. In your ethical panel, these people should have equal amounts of power, because if the person advocating on behalf of the business has all the power, it's theatre, right? So you don't need to do it. But if you have equal power when you are advocating on behalf of the user, then you really do have to consider and mediate and reach a common ground before you can go and do whatever it is that you're trying to do to prove something.
So this is what I talked to AJ Long about. He's the director of experimentation analytics, I think, at Prize Picks. I forget his title, but he's super senior, amazing, smart guy at Prize Picks. And that's like, in order to avoid unethical stuff, they do have to be at the same level. If someone above him tries to push down, there's a lot of guardrails that he's built in place at Prize Picks to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. But that is important. You can't just have someone kind of sit above the system and come in and just like mess everything up, because that's not a good, to your point, they have to be on equal footing. Otherwise, that's not good. It's really not protecting the user. It's not protecting the ethics of what you need to do there. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap. This was a long episode, but I think that's a good place to wrap. To basically summarize everything that we've talked about here, I think the most important things to think about when it comes to like ethics and experimentation, you've laid out a lot of really nitty-gritty things. So like, be user focused. And I'd say probably even skew a little bit more towards the user and their experience. When it comes to fake door testing, think about all the possible reasons before. When I say all the possible reasons, I mean, think about how that user might interact. What is their mindset? What are potential things that might be happening? And if you were that, I mean, simply put yourself in the shoes of that user. If you were going through that site and you saw what they saw, how would you feel? Would you be happy? Would you be pissed? Would you be frustrated? I think those are like important things when you think about fake door testing, and that helps increase the ethics. But what else would you add to that?
Yeah, a great thing that I really like is, would you be comfortable explaining to the user personally, talking to them face to face, and telling them what you had just designed and put them through? And if the answer is no, your test is probably not ethical. And if the answer is, yeah, I'd be fine, it's probably okay, they'd understand, then it might be more likely to be ethical, right? But like, if it's something that you would be ashamed of if they found out, that's a great signal to really double down on and then figure out why.
I love that. I think that's a really great framing. I think that's almost like true with a lot of life stuff too. Why would you do stuff if you feel like you'd be scared if people found out what you were doing in a specific way? So that's a good way to just have life. And it makes it easier because then you don't have to lie to people about things. You could just be honest about what you do, and that's a good thing. Unless you're trying to buy people gifts and surprise them, then that's good line. That's ethical line. John, it was great to have you. So you run and you're co-founder, or you're the founder of the agency Another Web is Possible, which I tried to figure out what your agency does, and we spent like 3 minutes trying to figure out how to frame it. The way that I would describe it is make your digital experience better, ethically. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, digital experience is probably the best example of everything we do. So 15 years of experience in lots of different areas of digital, and a lot of that has been in CRO. But I believe that CRO and experimentation generally works best when it is kind of a smart decision-making engine for a business rather than a tweaking engine to make the UI and UX a little bit different. I think like I approach it scientifically. I think you do need to use it to understand things. And if you're trying to build a better experience for your user, you're going to end up with much, much better outcomes.
So that you could find John at Another Web is Possible. So go check him out. I think you're an amazing LinkedIn follow because of the amount of, first of all, it's just your presence online is very entertaining, very fun. So if you're looking for a non-boring follow, definitely follow John for that. But I think your pivot into more ethics related to just website and digital experience, I love it. I think it's a thing that more people need to be talking about. And you're fighting the good fight, man. So keep on fighting it.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really the key thing I would say is that like a lot of people will think that sort of hacking your way into changing experiences or changing behavior is going to get the most bang for your buck, the most money, right? The best outcomes. But actually, I don't think that's true. I think the outcomes are better commercially doing right by your user and making things that people want to buy and use.
Easy peasy. Just do that and you're good to go. John, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.